Good morning. Welcome to Kotel Baker. Parshas Ba'aleischa has many fascinating parts to it. We're going to cover some of these things, some of the lessons, some of the messages that we could take from the details of this week's Parsha. I want to begin with a story that happens the second year after we went out of Mitzrayim. It was the next year afterwards, and the Yidden are getting ready to bring the Korban Pesach. Okay, it's a mitzvah on the 14th day of Nisan. You gather, you come together with your family or with a group, and you slaughter an animal, a little lamb, and on the 15th, which is that night when Pesach begins, we have the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. You sit and you eat it and you enjoy it. Now, like everything that's holy, there's certain restrictions to it. It's not really restrictions, but it's components which are necessary in order to experience that experience. And one of the things when it comes to offerings is that you have to be tahir, you have to be ritually pure. One of the ways that a person becomes ritually impure is if they're in contact with a dead body. If they're in a cemetery, or they're in other ways dealing with a dead body, they become impure, they're tamei. And by being tamei, when they're tamei, they cannot take part of this korban. Now, there was a group of Yidden who, while everyone else was enjoying or getting ready for their Korban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan, they were off to the side. They weren't able to participate because they were ritually impure. They were involved, according to different opinions, what exactly they were doing, but they were involved with the burial of a body. And because of that, they were not pure. There's a process they have to go through. They actually would have became pure that night, but they were not pure yet. So they have to wait, and they have to have the sprinkling of the mikvah and so on. But they were not pure. So they came to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they said, give us an opportunity. Why are we missing out? Why don't you just to try to think for a moment what was going on in their minds? Halacha says, Jewish law says, that you can bring the korban, which also means that you don't have to bring the korban. You're exempt. And to go and say, I'm going to make my way to Moshe Rabbeinu's tent on the eve of Pesach, or just a few hours before Pesach begins, and ask him, maybe there's something we could do. And not just maybe there's something we could do, but demand, Lama Nigara, why should we miss out? Why should we be lacking? What do you mean, why? Because you're tamei. Because you're impure, therefore you can't do it. But this group of Yidden, they risk Hashem, which is a fascinating statement. We're going to ask Hashem. Who has the opportunity to say, let me ask, and I'll get back to you? A regular Navi, a regular prophet, has prophecies, but it's not up to him exactly when it happens. He hopes, he tries, he davens. But it doesn't just come to him because he decided now I want to ask Hashem a question, and he's going to answer that question. But Moshe Rabbeinu, he comes and he says, I'm asking a question. I'll wait here, and I'll tell you what Hashem says. They tell the joke about the Prime Minister of Israel that went to visit the President of the United States in the White House. He comes in and he sees a red phone on the desk. So he asks the President, what's this? He says, oh. He takes the phone, he speaks to Hashem for a little bit, he hangs up, he pays the bill. A couple months later, the President of the United States says, speak as long as you want. It's a local call. It doesn't cost any money here. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I am turning to Hashem. I'll ask him and saying, why should we miss out? Moshe says, I'll check. Now, there was a thought that maybe there's two processes to this offering. One is the preparation. You have to slaughter it. The next step is at night when you eat it. So they're incapable of doing the first part. They said, you know what? Maybe we could hire some kohanim. We could ask some kohanim to do it, just like they do it for other offerings. Let them do it for the Korban Pesach. And this way, at night, when we'll be pure, we'll be thorough, we'll be able to have it. And Hashem says, and Moshe says, no, it's not going to work because you have to be able to do it yourself. Let me ask Hashem. And Hashem tells him the following mitzvah, that in 30 days from now, next month, in the 14th of Iyar, you'll have a second chance. All those that were not able to bring the korban the first time because they were impure or even they were traveling, let's assume. And even if it wasn't a mistake, maybe it was on purpose, the person just was not interested enough to come. He didn't value the importance of the korban. We say, come in 30 days, and Hashem says, I'll give you a second chance. So these people got their answer. Yes, today you cannot bring it because you're not tahor, but next month you could do it. And this became a mitzvah for generations to come. Which leads us to another interesting question. What happens if somebody converts? Somebody is not Jewish on Pesach, and he goes through a conversion process, and he becomes Jewish by the time Pesach Sheni rolls around. Fulfill it. Or someone that's not bar mitzvah. If you're under bar mitzvah, you don't have to do korban Pesach. And your bar mitzvah is, let's say, the day after Pesach. So, the question in halacha, if what happens, do you have the opportunity to do it later? That didn't accept directly what Hashem, what they were told, and they asked, they demanded, they requested, they're given another chance. The Frierdiker Rebbe talks about this at length. The Rebbe brings it in multiple places, and he says, this is a very, very important lesson in life. A person has to know that it's never too late. A person can never say, I missed it the first time, and that's it. Train left, right? We have to know that there's always another opportunity. And even if it wasn't a mistake or beyond our control, it was even that you want to make that change. If you decide later you want to make up for it, and you turn to Hashem, you daven, and you request, you always will have a second chance. Or to use the words of Chassidus, Ishtak Kain Farfalen, it's never too late. It's never foregone. You always have another opportunity. From Rabbi Akiva. How old was Rabbi Akiva when he started to learn Torah? He was 40 years old. The Gemara tells us a story about Rabbi Eliezer ben Durdaya. Eliezer ben Durdaya was a fellow. The Gemara of Avodah Zarah talks about him at length. And try not to bing because it's going to go on the. Eliezer ben Durdaya was a sinner. Without getting into all the details of his sin, you can look it up in the Gemara. But he sinned in very immoral ways and went to great extents to sin. He would travel, he would pay money. And in one particular incident where he traveled for a sinful experience, he paid money for that sin. And the person that he was sinning with told him, you or your soul is like air that's blown, that's gone. Just like you can't retrieve that air, it's lost. Similarly, you are all lost. You're completely lost. You have no chance to come back. You sinned so much and to such a great degree, and you knew better, you're over. And somehow the way she said it impacted him in a very strong way. And he felt really bad. I was like, really, I'm finished? I have no hope? And this Eliezer ben Durdaya, the Gemara tells us, went outside. He turned to the mountains and he said, mountains, mountains, pray for me. I want to be able to have a chance to do tshuva. I'm gone. It's really too late. And the Gemara goes on to say that the mountains obviously couldn't help him. He turned to the ocean. He turned to the heavens. All different things he turned. And when he realized that he's take, he overstepped his bounds. And the averos that he did, he's probably not going to be able to do tshuva in any way. He started to cry out of anguish. And he was sitting there crying about how terrible his situation is, how far he's gone spiritually, that he can't even be returned. And from the pain and from the crying, he died. A sage said, this is what it means. A person can acquire his world in one moment, which means the world to come. A person has the ability sometimes, if they really mean it, their whole life was not the way it was supposed to be. In his case, it was far from the way it's supposed to be. But he was sincere. He meant it. He really tried. So he was able to obtain his life in a small opportunity. Now, we don't want anyone to die in order to get it. But the message from Pesach Sheni, from this week's Parsha, is that it's never too late. You always could change. You always could fix. I'll just say one more story on this topic and we'll move on to the next topic. There was a Yid who was sitting in shul late at night learning. And, it got very interesting. He got lost in the learning. And by the time he left, it was well after midnight. And he's going home. He's walking along the streets of the shtetl. And he sees that from one of the shops, there's a light burning. Who's working so late? Probably someone's breaking in. Someone's stealing. Or if someone's not stealing, someone really, really is not making ends meet, so he's working late into the night. Who works at this hour? So he goes to the shop, he goes in, and he sees it's the shoemaker, right? He's sitting there, bent over a stool. He's an old elderly person. He's hunched over, and he's hitting the shoe. He's trying to fix, to mend whatever it is. Turns to me, he says, Rabbi Yid, it's 2:00 in the morning. Why are you sitting here so late and doing shoes? Go home. Is the financial situation that tough? He said, my friend, as long as the candle's still lit, you still could fix. And this story is attributed to many of the sources. Others say from this around Breslov source or other places, but the concept is that as long as the candle is lit, as long as a person's alive, as long as a person is still here, you always have the opportunity to fix. You always have the opportunity to change. Even in this case, we're Tamei. Torah says we can't bring it. Why would even ask for a second chance? No, but they went and they asked, and they were given a special thing. And Rashi tells us one more point here, that this mitzvah is not a new mitzvah. It was in the Torah, right? It just wasn't. Moshe Rabbeinu should have told us this, like every other mitzvah, that in case someone's Tamei, next month you bring it. Why do you have to have a situation? Because Megalgal in Schus Adei Zakai, we give this merit to a person who's meritorious. This group of people, because they cared so much, they have the merit that this section of Torah is said by them. In other words, Torah tells us they asked and they complained, and Moshe asked and they got the answer, and therefore they're attributed to this idea. Let's talk about another concept. Parshas Baalei Yisrael. We have the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. Aaron HaKohen lights the menorah. There were 3 items in the Mishkan that had to be made from solid gold. Okay? A lot of things in the Mishkan were gold, but had to be chiseled out of one block of gold without any soldering or combining. Was specific, beyond the norm. I see that all of our internet connections here are playing games, but in any case, but it has to be done with one block. And the third one is the kruvim. The kruvim were on top of the aron. It was 2 angelic faces of a boy and a girl, with wings according to opinions, and they had it was the cover. The base of it was the cover of the aron. It had to be made out of one solid piece of gold.
This cover.
Yeah, the cover and the top. Mm-hmm. And the question is why, and why particularly these 3 things have to be of solid gold. There's an interesting explanation that tells us what do these 3 things represent. Okay, the kruvim, they represent education, children, raising children, educating children, children in the literal sense, children in the spiritual sense, students. That's the kruvim. The second is the menorah, which is the idea of being a light, shining, showing the way, guidance. That's the idea of leadership in whatever form.